world is divided into 4 spheres, each sphere divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Chris Spanos. Coming up on the show, a New York Times article asks what it takes to raise moral children. I'll speak with parent, organizer, and educator Cynthia Peters about this question. But first, a look at media and Latin America. The Colombian paramilitary group Águilas Negras issued death threats to journalists Monday, December 1st. The threats are the latest attempt by the violent right-wing organization at intimidating those supporting Colombia's peace process. The group specifically threatened Reporters Without Borders, Telesur, and Colombian public TV station Canal Capital. In their statement, the Águilas Negras, which means Black Eagles in English, warned reporters that their days were numbered, giving them 30 days to disappear. The Águilas Negras have been described as a far-right criminal group, largely composed of former members of previous paramilitary groups, including the infamous self-defense units of Colombia, who were allegedly dismantled during the administration of former President Álvaro Uribe. The Águilas Negras regularly issue death threats to peace and social justice activists. The group accused the journalist of serving Castro Chavismo, referring to the former leaders of Cuba and Venezuela when covering Colombia's peace process. On September 17th, Uribe, whose alleged links with paramilitarism are currently under investigation, accused Canal Capital and Telesur of serving terrorism. According to the United Nations, 80% of all killings that have occurred during Colombia's 50-year civil war have been committed by right-wing paramilitaries. Raising moral children is not just the responsibility of parents. Society also plays a role. But in his widely circulated article in the New York Times, Raising Moral Children, Professor of Management and Psychology Adam Grant suggests otherwise. Cynthia Peters is a writer for ZNet and Telesur English. She's also an organizer for City Life Vida Urbana. She's a parent and editor at The Change Agent. She joins me to discuss the question of raising moral children. Hello, Cynthia, and welcome to Imaginary Lines.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
First of all, what do you make of this premise, raising moral children?
Well, that is what caught my eye when I saw the article, that this writer was proposing to tell us how to raise moral children. And so I thought, well, that's a very interesting and kind of large thing to take on. I wonder how what he's going to come up with and what he's going to share with parents. I'm also interested in this kind of thing just because as a parent myself, I know what it's like to try to raise children. I know how alone you feel sometimes and how big the job feels. You know, it does feel like it's our responsibility to raise moral children, to inculcate them with the values that we believe in and to help them grow up to be kind and generous. And I just want to say from the outset, I'm not opposed to parental advice. I think as a parent, I've spent many hours, talking with other parents and reading books and articles and just trying to get help and support and advice, really, for how do I do this really hard work. But I was pretty disappointed in the article because, the article just really focuses in on very minute behaviors that parents can do to, quote unquote, raise moral children. And I think by zooming in with such a narrow lens like that, the writer really does a disservice to parents. He makes it seem like it's really all on parents to figure out this piece. And it doesn't have anything to do with the large forces that we're all experiencing all the time and that our children are experiencing all the time. So the fact that he doesn't address any of those kinds of things was really disappointing.
And so in the article, the author uses experiment after experiment, case study after case study. And what are some of the kinds of conclusions that he explains can help guide parents?
Well, what he comes up with are 3 basic things to remember if you want to raise a moral child. The first one is to praise the child's character, not her behavior. So in this one experiment, children who had a lot of marbles had an opportunity to share those marbles with poor children. And the children who did share, some of them had their character praised. For example, they were told, "Oh, you're so generous. Oh, you're such a good person for sharing like that. You must be very kind and generous person." Other people just had their behavior praised. "Oh, that was so nice of you to share. That was good how you shared. Oh, it's very I noticed that you noticed that other children didn't have any marbles, and I noticed that you shared your marbles." So it's a little more neutral and just kind of praising the behavior, but not the child's character. And what the studies showed was that over a period of time, when then those same sets of children had another opportunity to share, the ones who had their character praised shared more readily than the ones who had their behavior praised. So the upshot to parents is praise your child's character, not your child's behavior. And then the next bit of advice was, it's kind of a similar idea. If you catch them not sharing, don't shame them. Don't make it seem like it's a fixed attribute of their character that they're not good sharers. Instead, express disappointment in their behavior. But hold out the possibility that they really are a good person and they can learn to share better. And then the third piece of advice was to be a good role model as a parent. And you don't have to talk about being generous. You don't have to talk about, "Oh, did you see what I just did and how I shared?" What you want to do in front of your kids is just share and don't talk about it. And they'll notice that and they'll take it in. And the studies show that, indeed, if you model good sharing behaviors, your children will copy those.
And so it's really interesting that the article was describing methods of raising children that didn't really apply to a whole lot of people. Who do you think the article was targeting?
Well, I think the New York Times, I don't know who reads the New York Times. I think it's mostly elites who read the New York Times. And by elites, I mean the coordinators of U.S. society, the people who are the decision makers, the people who get to make decisions about what everyday life is like in this country. So that's who the newspaper is probably targeting, which kind of creates a double irony here. I mean, the first irony is just that, wait a second, you're going to talk about how to raise moral children, and you're only going to focus on parental behaviors, and you're not going to zoom out a little bit, even just a little bit, and look at the context that parents are operating in. And that context is one where every day we live lives where we see extreme inequality happening, where we see systematized greed in operation, where we see people who have lots and lots and obscenely lots, and we see many, many people who have not enough. We live in a society where men of color can be killed by police and there's no consequences. We live in a society where we have 4% of the population of the whole world, yet we have 25% of the incarcerated population of the whole world. We live in I could go on at length about the kind of everyday injustices that people, including our children, experience. And to write about raising a moral child without taking into account the context of that and the immorality that frames our everyday existence seems to me to be really missing a good opportunity. But the second irony is that it's read by the most elite people in this country, the people who actually have the power to make a change and to make a difference in the way greed is organized in this country. And by focusing in on these individual behaviors, it's actually coaching these elites and these coordinators to not think about their role in the larger context and to think only about their private individual behaviors. And I think this is a shame. I think there's a lot of people who really do care, a lot of people who really don't want to live in a country that is so dramatically unequal and so obviously unfair. But we have so many messages to people that says that's not actually something you can do anything about. The only thing you can really control is your kid's ability to share marbles.
Well, thank you very much, Cynthia, for joining me on Imaginary Lines.
Thank you.
The global movement seeking justice for the August 9th police killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, has produced pictures and images resonating around the world. Of all the images, one picture that went viral shows 12-year-old protester Devont Hart sobbing as he hugs a white police officer in Portland, Oregon. The officer appears to be also emotional and seems to be comforting the boy. The picture symbolizes a moment of human reconciliation during heightened racial tensions. Guardian columnist Jonathan Jones said about the picture, "It is one moment among many, and the choice to look at it and celebrate it is clearly a choice to be lulled by cotton candy. It has got more than 400,000 Facebook shares. Each one of those shares is a choice of what to see and what not to see. In the context of the completely unresolved and immensely troubling situation, not just in Ferguson, but across the United States, where Ferguson has opened wounds that go back centuries. This picture is a blatant lie," he said. A picture does not have to be staged to be a lie. It just has to be massively underrepresentative of the wider facts and enthusiastically promoted to iconic status in a way that obscures those facts. Another Oregon photographer, Alex Riedlinger, told Visionary Futures that the picture is cropped so it doesn't show the photographers waiting to capture the staged photo. Riedlinger snapped 2 of his own photos before the boy and officer hugged. In the first picture, Riedlinger says that the boy is talking to his guardian before he approached the officer, and the second photo shows photographers preparing to snap the arranged moment. The cropping of an image is everything when it comes to its subjectivity and the way ideas are projected onto it. Riedlinger said, "The way this image has been propagandized is highly disturbing to me because it distracts from the real issues. This has never been about the relationship between individual officers and young black men, but about the way in which our institutions and society protect cops, granting them license to use lethal force in any circumstance. Whether they do use force or not is entirely irrelevant." That's it for today's Imaginary Lines. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Chris Spanos. Please join me next week.